The start of the DCU has officially begun with Superman. We have arrived to one of the most anticipated movies of the summer, directed by James Gunn, starring David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan, as well as, of course, Nicholas Hoult. This movie is about how Superman has to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage as well as his upbringing as reporter Clark Kent, as he is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the human way, as all these things are caught up in a world that deems those things old-fashioned. So we're going to talk about this movie and help you decide whether or not it's the right one to watch as a Christian. Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I'm your host Tim, and we exist to help Christians live in the world, not of the world, by utilizing our convictions in the movies and shows we watch. Superman is rated PG-13 for some action, violence, as well as some language. So we're going to dive into any convictions you may have that may prevent you from watching Superman, any theological themes present within the film, and wrap it up with my own thoughts on Superman. Without further ado, let's dive into the Christian Conviction Meter. If this is your first time here, the Christian Conviction Meter is a series of 5 convictions that may distract or hinder your relationship with Jesus. Ultimately, we are a resource to help you figure out whether or not Superman aligns with the convictions God has given you. And kicking things off with violence and gore here, superpower action is a part of the film. Whether it's a Green Lantern ring or it's heat vision, flying, punching, a weird battle axe thing, whatever it looks like, it's a part of the film. There's a lot of different supers that are a part of this movie, and so using their powers is all throughout the film. Whether they can change into whatever, or they have T-spheres that can explode or hit at high velocities, or you have a dog that can fly and chomp. All these things are a part of the movie. There also is some destruction of buildings and the ground and all that stuff, some fire, explosions, things of that sort in the film, as well as some hand-to-hand combat, punching, kicking, slamming. Some even WWE-esque moves are a part of the film. But in all seriousness, in terms of some of the gore that's a part of this movie, there's some cuts, scrapes, bruises, a bit of minor blood contained throughout the film. The most we do see in terms of blood, it's kind of like coughed up a little bit, but it's very early on in the film. All these things in mind, it's going to be a 3 out of 5 here. Our next category is lust, and for the most part, obviously with a Superman story, you're going to have Lois Lane and Clark Kent, and with that there is some kissing moments that happen throughout the film. Some are pretty passionate, so that is something to keep in mind for younger viewers. But that being said, the most we see is just someone asking how long they've been hooking up. There is no nudity that's a part of the film, nothing to worry about in that regard. It's just kissing. We're going to give this a 1 out of 5. Our next category is substances, and for the most part, in terms of drug use specifically, there's the use of cigars, and there also is a few drinks contained within the film. Most of the drinks and most of the time with the cigar is more kind of background, but that being said, just to be on the safe side here, we're going to give this a 2 out of 5. Our next category is profanity, and there's a decent amount here. Hell is used, the AS word is used, the DA word is used, as well as the BI word and the SH word. All of these are used within the film, as well as a few middle fingers as well. And there also is the use of God and Jesus in a more reactionary statement rather than praise and worship, like we all should. All these things in mind is going to be a 3 out of 5 in this category. And wrapping it up with intense/horror scenes, this is not a horror movie, so you don't have to worry about any horror-esque images contained within the film. But as I did talk about in violence and gore, there is a lot of explosions, destruction, fire, all of that. There's some buildings that collapse. There's a big giant hole that happens in the film. There is a lot of just some intense moments, and there also is intensity from the superhero action that is a part of the movie. There also is a bit of some torture scenes to a character because a certain element that he interacts with causes harm to this character, but there is no like physical damage of like actually harming someone. There also is a Russian roulette game that is played, and a person unfortunately dies kind of towards off screen a little bit. It's far away, so you don't see the full brutal impact of what occurs in the film. That being said, though, there also is a scene of popping his shoulder back into place after it's dislocated. All these things in mind for this category, we're going to give this a 3 out of 5. So our grand total on the conviction meter is going to be a 12 out of 25, just under halfway on the conviction meter. But that being said, it is pretty moderate in its violence and gore, its profanity, as well as its intense scenes. So if you struggle in any of the areas we talked about or it make you feel uncomfortable, causes a little bit of a gut check, any movie you watch is not as important as your relationship with Christ. So if any of the things we talked about compromises your convictions in any way, make sure to stick with the convictions that God has given you. That being said, it leads us beautifully as we talk about some theological themes present within Superman. And there really isn't much here. There is no explicit talk about Jesus, the Bible, Christianity, the church. None of that is contained within the film. Superman as a character is referenced to a few biblical archetypes, but there really isn't anything clear specifically in this film. It's just used in past comic book, not just movies, but also comic book stories themselves. Again, nothing explicitly about Christianity in this film. So with that wrapped up, it's time to dive into my thoughts and what I think of Superman. And this was by far my most anticipated film of the year. It's the start of the DCU, which I was very excited about, and all the things leading up to it. I was anticipating this film to be a ton of fun, and what a way to start the DCU. This film was so much fun. It was everything I hoped for in terms of how much fun I had in the theater. Starting things off with talking about the story here, it's pretty straightforward. It can get a little confusing at times, especially with some of the more weirder elements if you're not a comic book expert in DC or you don't really spend as much time with DC content. I'm saying this on my behalf. There are some things that are definitely unique and interesting to DC that separate it from any sort of other comic book stuff. It is kind of cool, and overall it has some really solid moments in here, from some solid action as well as some solid humor, namely by Crypto, who was definitely a highlight in the film, especially for my theater. Lots of laughs from Crypto in this one, but there also is a lot of heart in the film. I love in particular, there's a scene that John Kent kind of reinforces Clark a little bit. I just love that scene. I thought it was really well done. There also is a great monologue by both Lex and Superman towards the end of the film. Both are fantastic in their own ways. And since we're talking about characters, let's talk about our three leading actors here. First off, David Corenswet, I thought did a fantastic job as Superman. I think he is a great blend of having some Cavill-isms, but also bringing in some of the stuff that is beloved about the Christopher Reeve version of Superman, and even a little bit of some of the animated versions of Superman as well. This is a much more joy-filled, much more happy Kansas City farm boy, goody two-shoes style Superman, and it is nice to see. I love that about this film. It sticks tried and true to the comics in that regard. And Rachel and Nicholas were also great as their respective characters of Lois and Lex Luthor, especially after the DCEU's Lex Luthor being such a miscast. This one is much better in nearly every way. I really am excited to see more of Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor in the future. And overall, I felt like I was watching a golden age comic book movie. I felt like I had opened up just a classic comic book and just was reading through it. That is the best way to describe this film. I've seen some other people say that this is the most comic book movie they've ever seen, and I wholeheartedly agree, because it leans into so many weird and wacky territories, and it's not ashamed of it at all. There's some weird moments, but that's totally okay, and it's handled so well, and it still is enjoyable within it. It's not ashamed to be a comic book film, and I love that. Like I said, it feels like a golden age comic book story, but also at the same time, it has the same type of like magic of a classic 90s film from something like The Lion King or Jurassic Park or any of these classic 90s films. There's something about them that just brought the magic of the movies. This has that same type of quality just for the comic book genre. And this film not only was well-rounded and so much fun. This is the most fun I've had watching a comic book movie since Across the Spider-Verse. I had so much fun with this film. It was a total blast throughout the entire 2 hours and 9 minutes of watching the film. But also at the same time too, it has me excited about the future of the DCU. I think this was the perfect route to go for them, of bringing this sort of, I guess the best way to put it is comic book cheesiness with heart and magic and just a fun that has been missing from, I'd say, DC at large, because they've gone very dark and gritty over the last few years or so, and this was just fun. I had many moments where I laughed. I had a smile on my face. This was a ton of fun. Arguably, without a doubt, in my mind, one of the best films of the year. Not even arguably, it's not even a debate. This is going to end up in my top 10 at the end of the year for sure. I absolutely enjoyed it. I'm giving it a 9.4 out of 10. Like I said, one of the best films of the year. So it is a 12 out of 25 on the conviction meter. It is a 9.4 out of 10 in our review. Those are my thoughts, so let me know yours down in the comments below. Let's chat all things about Superman in the comments. But also, let's dive into some comics, I guess. I got to do some homework on the DC universe, which, honestly, it's not bad homework, I will say that. But while you're down there, consider hitting that like and subscribing for us. Joining our community here on YouTube just helps to send us out into the algorithm, allows us to reach more Christians, to help them utilize their convictions in the movies and shows they watch, to ultimately follow Jesus better. That's our ultimate goal here on the channel, is to help you pursue after Jesus with the best of your abilities here on earth. I am rambling, but thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with us here. We truly appreciate it. It means the absolute world to us. But before you go, there's a few video recommendations that YouTube is suggesting to you, one of which is Man of Steel, the last Superman film we got back in 2013. Our review is up and posted for that. We'll see you all in the next one.